Hello, I'm Shweta Mishra from India, where I work as a teacher and teacher educator. My topic is discussing the issues in superior girl student narrative in South Asia. Um, Start this presentation. Uh, Before I get into the gender aspect of my topic, I believe it is important that I make two clarification. Um, The first is about my regional focus. While my topic and the references that I have used are focused on South Asia, which is approximately 25% of the world's population, my experience is limited to India. So several examples that I'm going to cite are from India. But I've considered the entire South Asia and not simply India because although distinct cultural and political differences in the South Asian nations impact their respective educational practices and policy decisions, all these nations make considerable efforts to institute gender equality in education. And the social construction of gender in these nations have similar patterns, which means instituting gender equity practices in one nation can possibly influence others. Second, I'm presenting my session as a pre-recorded one, but I originally intended to present it as a discussion. The reviewers and organizers, while noting the significance of my topic in the society today, questioned its relevance to the audience here, that is, the members of the TESOL community. So I think it's best that I illustrate how English is a second language and thus teaching it impacts policies in South Asia and how you as an audience can contribute to this topic. Uh, I will do this in 2 points. One, the first one, uh, the economic and social value of English in the world today hardly needs elaboration. And because South Asia is marked by a history of British colonization as well as linguistic diversity, the global power of English, the global power English wields in terms of education and commerce is especially potent here. A report by a British Council in Nepal that studied the role of English in terms of skills development in South Asia uh, stated that English proficiency inevitably means access to higher education and the superior employment opportunities. Moreover, English proficiency is a mark of social status illustrating educational and cultural standing. And as this British Council report states, research and attitudes towards English often reflect a strong belief in the power of English and a desire to be one of the many who speak the language for reasons of practicality and prestige. I am in India now, and a simple Google search that I carried out recently for the word spoken English yielded 270 million results, mostly directions to classes and lesson videos for English. And of course, this included those from Cambridge and British Council, which are the most reputed ones here. Because of such notions regarding English and social standing, not only is English as a second language important to secure the uh, economic well-being in South Asia, but also its proficiency alongside social languages ensures developed civic awareness and engagement amongst the populace. This is because proficiency in English opens up perspectives about social ideals and else. But unfortunately, English proficiency is often linked to social class, which means the underprivileged classes never learn civic engagement. This is where the role of ESL educators becomes crucial by teaching English, they're empowering many. Of course, post-colonial nations have a tendency to view English as an illustration of intelligence, and this obsession with English does deprive students of real education. This is being addressed in research and even in educational policy changes in some ways nowadays. And this brings me uh, to the impact of English on policies in South Asia. Educational policies here are notably developed around English, and this can mean purposely ignoring English too. For instance, a 2018 research called Teaching English, the Condition of English in Multilingual Afghanistan notes that the Afghani constitution makes no mention of English, for that matter, any non-Afghan language uh, or Arabic foreign languages. And this means the population has to strive to learn English and thus understand the world outside Afghanistan from a perspective. that's crucial in many ways because uh, knowing to an extent knowing English is also important to the Afghanis to understand their nation in context to the world. The research notes that there is an implicit understanding amongst the populace that English proficiency ensures development, and several myths or assertions regarding English exist in the nation, including the idea that if one desires to learn English, schools are not enough and private classes are essential. Mm, and that English and that female students do not learn English as well as the male ones. In Bangladesh, the national curriculum makes English compulsory through primary, secondary, higher secondary, and university levels. And although students do get to choose whether their medium of English of education will be English or Bangla. Now, a 2019 paper by Rahman et al. Notes that there is a washback effect wherein testing and assessment impacts teaching practices and the curriculum, and thus English proficiency and learning in the nation is affected, and this in turn affects employability. In fact, this is a pattern I've observed as a student, a teacher, and a teacher educator in India as well. Um, in India, Pakistan, English has the status of being an official language. In fact, much like in Bangladesh, the by default crucial position of English in India's education system is apparent in the fact that until recently, all state and national English medium schools were in the medium of instruction for the past 10 primary school years, followed by the two secondary high school years, has been English for decades. And one might think that English medium naturally means students will learn every subject in English thus have English proficiency. But the learning atmosphere is such that English use is not always encouraged, and when teachers that teach these various subjects in English struggle with the language, and this sometimes includes English teachers too, English like subject teachers, that subject that is English teachers too. Students continue to struggle in terms of developing speaking, comprehension, and writing skills. Um, Again, this directly affects their future employability prospects. Um, Now, coming to some other South Asian nations to illustrate the importance of ESL in South Asia. In Sri Lanka, English has a special constitutional status as a link language, which means it serves as a link between linguistically diverse population. Indeed, English is a link language, a bridge language in most South Asian nations that house populations hailing from diverse native tongues, and its accessibility. The accessibility of English enables communication on neutral grounds. This is an illustration of diversity in terms of languages within South Asian nations. Nepal is a small landlocked nation, but other than English, the nation houses people speaking 122 different languages. Um, in the other South Asian nations, English is either the official foreign language in education or serves as a medium of instruction in such a manner that it enables access to higher level specialized education and careers in STEM. Even in Iran, where the use of English in primary education has been controlled and banned across time, the popularity of English and its prominence in higher education illustrates the awareness that English is a tool in providing access to development in terms of ideas and technology. All this goes to show that ESL is crucial in South Asian nations, and despite some policy measures to ensure the percolation of English, there is a need for the international ESL community to provide its language resources and aid to these nations, of course, while recognizing the importance of their native languages and identities. Simply said, the reason my topic is important to consider here is because English proficiency means improved employability, and the, the evidence shows that most people who seek employment for their children are likely to want them to attend English medium schools, that is in South Asia. And English proficiency also means improved civic awareness and engagement, and thus development of the underprivileged classes. As the paper on teaching English in multilingual Afghanistan, the one that I recently mentioned, states, this is a pattern observed worldwide amongst speakers of minority languages and multilingual. like a pattern observed worldwide among speakers of minority languages to be multilingual or trilingual. So in Afghanistan, Dari and Pashto, which are the strong majority languages, the speakers of these languages are either bilingual um, or they simply speak their own language. They're monolingual, and other language speakers are either tri or multilingual. In India, similarly, the tribal peoples end up needing their home languages, the state languages, and then Hindi and possibly English. So, four languages in all, but the speakers of Hindi, which is the majority population in comparison to the tribal peoples, um, only need to learn English alongside their native tongue of Hindi. So, as Kathleen Hughes states, the more marginalized one is, the more likely it is that one needs to be multilingual, and this does have implications in education, including for whom an international language such as English is likely to advantage the most. So now I'd like to come to the main issue I want to present, that is the link uh, between English and gender, that is education and English and gender, that is. So the issues in superior girl student narrative in South Asia. I have already established that that ESL impacts policies in South Asia, so it is relevant to you as a TESOL audience. And this narrative is a consequence of state and institutional efforts to ensure gender equality in education. It has been well documented by organizations such as UNICEF and UNGAI, which is the United Nations Girls Education Initiative, that an increase in the number of out of school female students means an increase in social issues like child labor or child marriage, mm, wherein underage girls are married because they are considered a burden to the family. Indeed, the number of out of school children had considerably decreased, at least in the pre COVID era, in many South Asian nations, such as Nepal, Bhutan, India, and Pakistan, because of such efforts. Notably, nations in South Asia have shown policy and reform commitment to the Sustainable Development Goal 4, which talks about inclusive and equity in education, and as well as the UNICEF 2021 goal, which is to increase out of school female student enrollment. However, gender equality, such that female students and thus women are not deprived of their right to educational equality, has not truly been achieved. And a major reason behind this is the nature of policies which have worked towards enrolling girl students in school and keeping them there. Um, these policies, in terms of their wording, in terms of the narrative, um, send the message that girl students are academically superior to boys. The problem here is that it suggests male students are natural academic underachievers, which in turn challenges the educational equity objective of gender inclusiveness, and this affects women's empowerment in the long run. An example of this is the Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao campaign in India, which means educate the daughter, save the daughter. Clearly, this policy aims to encourage parents to send their female children to school. The advertisement that promote this campaign focus on the academics, on promoting the academic skills of girl students as well. Undeniably, there is power in this narrative to encourage school enrollment, but it does not ensure that their education and their future in the society is in par with the boys. Um, Similarly, a 2014 paper called The Islamic Traditions of Modernity, Gender, Class, and Islam in a Transnational Women's Education Project, it conducted its research based on ethnographic data collected from female teachers from rural and low-income communities in Pakistan. Um, and this paper stated that the term Padhi Likhi refers to an educated woman, and it's associated with a place of privilege linked to the middle class and Islamic morality. This shows a policy objective to maintain gender positions linked to the institutions of family, community, and Islam, as opposed to dismantling them to ensure gender equality, or maybe changing them to ensure gender equality through education. Um, the absence of boys. or the fact that they are frequently ignored in the policies linked to gender equity in education is a problem, because it means we do not encourage the boys in terms of academic achievements. And if you presume academic learning is a means of understanding the society and world around us better, boys are not being encouraged to do so, which also means they do not truly learn gender equality through the existing educational systems. Now, the global pervasiveness of this issue in educational systems around the world has been well documented by organizations such as the Commonwealth Education Hub and UNGAI, and many independent researchers. Now, in the UK, the discourse on gender equity has been concerned has been concerned with the issue that is boys' underachievement. And one such research that I studied was by Mike Younger. It's called the Gender Agenda in the United Kingdom. Uh, Shows that teacher education, especially the early training, the initial training and the education of primary school teachers, needs to be such that it explores the concept of gender awareness and equality to deal with this issue. However, I have not been able to find plans or proposals that affect the needs to address this problem, that is the superior girl student narrative in educational policies. Um, it is important to understand that it is difficult to bring this issue into prominence without diluting the importance of the education of the female student, especially when there are social and political elements and agendas directed against enabling uh, education of the female child. And this is true for many places in South Asia. Uh, However, when the importance of this issue is being recognized in the West, as the research that I showed you, like Mike Younger research that I just showed, there is obviously an effort to bring about strategies to deal with it. So, what I'm asking is if it is possible to consider the significance of this issue in the developmental stage that South Asian nations are in at the moment. And they're in various developmental stages, but um, again, I'm asking if it is possible to uh, address this issue at this stage. Um, 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 at this point, I would like to bring you back to the my earlier discussion regarding the prominence of English in South Asia. Um, um, This is a statement by Indira Liange in a paper referring to critical pedagogical approaches in context to Sri Lanka, but I believe this applies to the rest of South Asia as well. And uh, it says, in practice, English is seen as advantageous, desirable, and valuable. In spite of that, it is also an instrument of inequality. First, because those individuals not fluent in English are denied opportunities for social economic achievement, and second, because distinctions have emerged between the value of prestige and non-prestige varieties of English. Um, Now, if we consider that social classes are defined around English in South Asia, and female students face considerable hurdles in acquiring education, women without education, without English proficiency, are doubly disadvantaged than males in the same similar age groups and similar educational accessibilities. In other words, their opportunities for employability and civic engagement are even less than that of the men, because of the patriarchal nature of the society, which is potentially a consequence of the lack of quality of education for boys and the kind of education where concepts of gender equality are a prime focus. Moreover, a woman with English proficiency is not necessarily as advantaged as a man in her position, because her education and language proficiency mean she marries a man with better prospects, as opposed to finding uh, an, a standing for herself in the society. The superior female student narrative is thus not truly helping the female students, in that it continues to encourage gender equality. My questions that I ask here today, the seek responses as well as intend to initiate a discourse on policy changes that can change the superior female student narrative. And these are my questions. Um, One, how can English languages globality that makes the ESL classroom an important setting for gender reform be employed to change the narrative? In what ways can the overall approach to policies and campaign be modified to incorporate these changes? And how will the region's current developmental phase influence such efforts? Um, that's the end of my presentation here today. Thank you and have a good day.